Welcome back, dear friends, to another journey into the living pages of Scripture where ancient lives speak eternal truths into our own. Today, our path leads us into the bittersweet story of a woman whose name still stirs hearts after thousands of years, Rachel. She was the woman Jacob worked 14 years to marry, but her beauty came with a price she never expected to pay. This is more than a love story. It's about rivalry, heartbreak, and searching for worth when life seems to favor someone else. In the next few minutes, you will witness Rachel's rise, her struggles, and the twist that forever shaped the nation of Israel. If stories like this stir your faith, tap like so more people can discover it, and don't miss the rest of this series. It all began beside a quiet well in a foreign land. Jacob, weary and dusty from days of travel, had just escaped his home in Beersheba. He was running from the wrath of his brother Esau, whom he had deceived. His mother Rebekah had sent him far away to her family in Padan Aram to find a wife and, perhaps, safety. After the long journey, Jacob approached a field. There, a great stone covered the mouth of a well, and nearby flocks of sheep lay resting under the watch of shepherds. He asked them where they were from. "We are from Haran," they replied. At once, Jacob's heart stirred, for that was where his mother's family lived. "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" he asked eagerly. "Yes, we know him," they answered. And then, almost as if heaven itself had timed it, one shepherd added, "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." Jacob turned and saw her, Rachel. Scripture says, Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful, but it was not just her beauty that caught Jacob's attention. She walked with the sure steps of a shepherdess, strong, capable, confident. She was not a delicate flower waiting to be admired. She was a woman who worked under the open sky, guiding flocks across rough fields, doing work most often done by men. Something within Jacob came alive. Without hesitation, he strode forward, rolled the massive stone from the well, a feat that usually required several men, and drew water for Rachel's sheep. And then, in a rush of emotion, he kissed her and wept. Through tears, he told her who he was, the son of Rebekah, her father's sister. At once, Rachel ran home to tell her father. When Laban heard the news, he ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, and welcomed him into his home. For a month, Jacob stayed with Laban, working alongside his flocks. And during that time, his admiration for Rachel grew into deep love. One day, Laban said to him, "Just because you are my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Jacob did not hesitate. "I will work for you 7 years, in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." The scriptures record that those years seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Imagine that years of backbreaking labor melting into what felt like a short wait, simply because his heart was fixed on her. Rachel must have lived in the joy of being chosen the woman a man would willingly sacrifice years of his life to marry. But she did not yet know that the seeds of deception were already being sown, seeds that would twist her wedding day into heartbreak. At last, the wedding feast arrived. Jacob's years of service were complete. His love had endured, and now it was time to take Rachel as his wife. The feast was loud with music, the air rich with celebration. But Laban, her father, had other plans. His elder daughter Leah was still unmarried, and in their culture it was unthinkable for the younger sister to marry before the elder. Laban said nothing of this to Jacob. Instead, under the cover of darkness and the custom of a veiled bride, he gave Leah to Jacob instead of Rachel. That night, Jacob unknowingly consummated the marriage with Leah. Morning light brought the truth and Jacob's shock. "What is this you have done to me?" he demanded of Laban. "I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Laban's answer was cold tradition. "It is not our custom here to give the younger before the older. Finish this daughter's bridal week. Then we will give you the younger also, in return for another 7 years of work." And so, after just 1 week, Rachel became Jacob's second wife. But her joy was tangled with pain. She was his love, yet now she was forced to share him not with a stranger, but with her own sister. From that day on, Rachel would live in the shadow of rivalry. Though Jacob loved her far more than Leah, the Lord saw Leah's pain and opened her womb while Rachel remained barren. This was the beginning of long years of heartache. Leah bore sons Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, each child a silent declaration that God had seen her suffering. Each birth was a new wound for Rachel. She had Jacob's love, but no child to carry his name. The weight grew unbearable. Genesis tells us, when Rachel saw that she was not bearing children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I'll die." It was a cry born of desperation, the voice of a woman who felt abandoned by heaven. Jacob's reply was raw. "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" Rachel decided to act. Following the custom of the time, she gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a surrogate. Bilhah bore Dan, then Naphtali. At Naphtali's birth, Rachel declared, "I have had a great struggle with my sister and I have won." But it was a victory only in name. The rivalry burned on. Leah, unwilling to be outdone, gave her own servant Zilpah to Jacob. 2 more sons came, Gad and Asher. Then Leah herself bore Issachar, Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Rachel remained without a child of her own. Her identity, the beautiful, chosen one, felt like it was slipping away. Her sister, the less loved, was the one building the family legacy. And then the turning point came. Genesis records, "Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb." After all the years of waiting, God acted. Rachel conceived and bore a son, Joseph. Holding him in her arms, she said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph, meaning, "May he add." For even in her joy, she prayed for more. Her shame was lifted. Her arms were no longer empty. Her heart, once heavy with jealousy, now tasted the sweetness of answered prayer. Joseph was more than a child. He was a sign that God had not forgotten her. But Rachel's journey and the tests of her heart were far from over. Joseph's birth was the moment Rachel had prayed for the proof that the God who seemed silent had, in fact, been listening all along. But her journey did not slow here. Life around Jacob's household was shifting. His years of service to Laban were ending, and his thoughts turned toward the land of his fathers. Jacob approached Laban with his request to return home. But Laban, shrewd and unwilling to lose the man whose presence had brought him prosperity, resisted. Eventually, an agreement was made Jacob would stay, but his wages would be measured in livestock. Over the years that followed, Jacob's herds multiplied through God's blessing, while tension between him and Laban deepened. Then came a turning point. The Lord spoke clearly to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." This was more than a command. It was a promise of presence. Jacob obeyed. Quietly, without telling Laban, he gathered his family wives, children, servants, and set out toward Canaan. But as they left, Rachel made a decision that Scripture records without fully explaining. She took her father's household gods, small carved idols, objects linked in that culture to inheritance, protection, and family authority. Why did she take them? Some believe it was to secure her future inheritance. Others think she may have been tempted to hold on to the old ways of her family's household. Whatever her reason, this act would shadow the rest of her story. When Laban discovered they were gone, he pursued Jacob and overtook them in the hill country of Gilead. In a tense confrontation, he demanded the return of the idols. Jacob, unaware that Rachel had taken them, made a bold and dangerous declaration. "If you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live." Rachel hid the idols by sitting on them, claiming she could not rise because she was experiencing the way of women. Laban searched everywhere, but found nothing. The moment passed, but the words of Jacob's curse would echo darkly in the years ahead. For now, however, Rachel's life went on. She had her husband's love. She had her son Joseph, whose name still carried the prayer for more. And that prayer burned brightly in her heart. Genesis 30-24 preserves her words, "May the Lord add to me another son." It was not enough to have been delivered from barrenness. Once Rachel believed God could and would do it again. She longed for her arms to hold another child. The seasons turned. Jacob's family traveled under God's direction. They moved from Paddan Aram toward Bethel, and then beyond. Along the way, Joseph grew into a lively, intelligent boy, the delight of his mother's heart. But her longing for a second child remained, steady and unshaken. And in time, it happened. The journey took them toward Ephrath. The road stretched between two places, neither the starting point nor the destination. It was there, in the in-between, that Rachel's labor began. But this labor was not like Joseph's birth. The pain was intense, overwhelming. Genesis 35-16 says simply, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. Her body strained under the weight of new life, even as her strength slipped away. The midwife tried to comfort her. "Don't be afraid, you have another son." But the joy of that announcement could not hold back the truth. Rachel was dying. With her last breaths, she named the child Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. It was a name soaked in pain, the cry of a mother whose final moments were shadowed by loss. But Jacob, refusing to let his son carry a name rooted in grief, renamed him Benjamin, son of my right hand. It was an act of love, a way of honoring Rachel's sacrifice while speaking hope over the boy's life. Rachel died there on the road, far from a settled home. Genesis 35-19 states it plainly. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. Jacob built a pillar over her tomb, a monument to the woman he had loved so fiercely. That marker stood for generations, a silent witness to her story. Rachel's journey had ended, but her impact had not. Her firstborn, Joseph, would one day rise from slavery to become the governor of Egypt, a man whose wisdom and foresight would save nations during a famine. Her second son, Benjamin, would become the father of a tribe known for its warriors and its first king, Saul. And even beyond her children, Rachel's name would echo through the scriptures. Centuries later, the prophet Jeremiah would write, "A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." Jeremiah 31-15. This image of Rachel became a symbol of motherly sorrow, not just for her own sons, but for the nation of Israel itself. When Herod ordered the massacre of Bethlehem's infants in Matthew 2, the gospel writer saw in it the fulfillment of Jeremiah's words. In that moment of tragedy, it was as though Rachel's voice was still weeping across the centuries. Her life had been marked by love, the love of Jacob that endured years of service. It had been marked by longing, the years she prayed for a child. It had been marked by rivalry, the bitter tension between her and Leah. And it had been marked by loss, her final breath given to bring Benjamin into the world. Yet through it all, there was a thread of divine purpose. Rachel was not forgotten. God remembered her, opened her womb, and wove her sons into the foundation of his people. Her story reminds us that God's timing is not our timing, and his purposes are often beyond what we can see. She did not live to witness Joseph's rise to power, nor Benjamin's role in Israel's history. But her life, and even her death, became part of the greater story God was writing. And perhaps that is Rachel's lasting message to us. Even when you feel overlooked, Even when the waiting stretches on and hope feels faint, God remembers. He does not forget the tears you've cried. He does not ignore the prayers you've whispered in the night. His purposes may unfold differently than you imagined, but they will unfold. Rachel's voice still calls to us through the pages of Scripture. Hold on. Trust. You are not forgotten. If Rachel's story has stirred your heart, share this with someone who is waiting on a promise. Subscribe for more powerful Bible stories, told with depth, beauty, and truth. And in the comments, tell us what part of Rachel's journey spoke to you the most. And remember, like Rachel, you are seen, you are known, and you are remembered by the God who keeps His word.